Hey everyone! So glad for you guys to be joining us here today. I'm Katrina, and I'm a vet student from the University of Edinburgh, and I'm here with Alison from Marine Dynamics, and we're going to talk, she's going to give us a talk about the white shark research and conservation. Full disclaimer, it's a pre-recorded talk because we're unsure of how the Wi-Fi situation was going to hold up, but she's here live with us to answer any questions afterwards. I'll just give a short intro, and then Alison, if you want to say anything else, you can.
Yeah, just a basic hi. Internet seems to be great now, but like she said, I'm going to be here the whole time. We just figured rather not risk it with how it goes down here with Wi-Fi and electricity. But what a fantastic platform and opportunity to be part of this. I'm really excited to chat further with you guys. But back over to you, Katrina.
But yeah, so Alison graduated in marine biology from the Uni of Bangor in 2006. She and the DICT team in 2007, she joined them, and in her first 5 years used observational data to complete her master's at the University of Cape Town. Alison has an extensive collection of papers on shark biology and is now the senior shark biologist at DICT and is currently working towards her PhD. So super excited to hear from you. If you guys have any questions, post them away and we'll get to them at the Q&A session at the end. There'll also be a chat room that we'll go into after the talk and the live Q&A if you guys have any further, anything else you want to talk about or just some discussion. But yeah, that's everything from me. As always, there's the QR codes on the page that you can donate to and that you can access more information from. And yeah, it's everything. Ready to get started.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Hi, so without further ado, we're going to talk about Southern Africa's great white shark. So I moved down to South Africa at the young age of 21 years old. That's a picture of me not long after I'd arrived, having done my undergrad in marine biology at University of North Wales, Bangor in the UK. A lot like most of you guys who will be on this talk today, I'm British. Yeah, I'm now almost 36 years old, so I've been here for almost 15 years. But yeah, looking back at this young photo of me, you can see the white shark I'm looking at is equally as young. And so, yeah, I set about going to study a master's degree. As I arrived here, I started collecting data from day one. I obviously saw the amazing opportunity to combine the studies with going out on Marine Dynamics vessel as their guest guide. And so I was able to collect a really extensive observational data set through photography and metadata on the sharks that we were seeing. So yeah, in the early days, I did my master's degree actually at University of Cape Town and published the work from that. And now finally, I'm just finishing off my PhD now on more of the natural movement ecology of the great whites. And that's just a quick introduction to me. Let's get stuck into the real interesting components today of this talk. And of course, they are the great white shark. But first and foremost, an introduction to the amazing area that we're based in here. So those of you that haven't been to South Africa before, we are located 2 hours east of Cape Town. So a lot of people do drive through to this region for a day visit. Incentive for that is to go out on a boat and see one of the amazing marine 5 species in the region. So we get different arrays of top predators that move through the coastal bay, but pretty much reliably what we can see are whales, dolphins, penguins, seals, and sharks throughout the year. And from a research perspective, it's always fascinating to see not only how the seasonality plays into this whole ecosystem dynamics, but also how these different species interact with one another. And of course, this location for white sharks, if you look most of the places around the world, if you want to go and study them or go and dive with them and photograph them, it's quite expensive and it's quite far from shore. Well, our location at Dyer Island is less than 20 minutes away. So it's really an amazing sort of base site to be able to go and figure out what these guys are doing throughout their visits. So typically what we would do is launch from Clambay Harbour. We'd come out to Dyer Island in winter, we'd anchor there. In summer months, we'd anchor close to the shoreline. So you can just see this Google Earth map of where we are located. And I guess one of the first questions I had when I got here was, just how water temperature governed everything. So being on anchor, I would notice very quickly how the conditions change throughout season and also how the batches of white sharks that move through the region change in their size, their demographic, and also their behavior. So winter months are very typically associated with hunting white sharks around seal colonies. Summer months are much more of the inshore behavior. And of course, South Africa has an Atlantic and an Indian Ocean meeting off its coasts. So the Atlantic current being the cold Benguela, and the eastern bound Agulhas current being the warm Indian Ocean side. And depending on the season, a different current will dominate. So for my master's, I actually looked at environmental influences, and I found that there were some very stringent correlations with warmer water years in this region and, for example, more female sharks on average. A colleague in Cape Town found similar findings with her study, Kay Welts. She looked at 2 beaches in Cape Town, Muizenberg and Fisher, popular surf locations as well. And she also found that in warmer water years, there was just much higher chance of seeing white sharks. Something like 8 times more likely at one of the beaches with 18 Celsius versus 14. And I guess at this point, it was quite interesting because it's always complex to tease apart movement of prey species and white sharks distribution and water temperature and white sharks distribution, because they're all interconnected. But certainly with things like bather safety issues and climate change issues, this kind of information is really important. And it was just one of the things we were able to do with the boat-based information. So this species of shark, one of the largest carnivorous fishes on the planet, doesn't need much of an introduction, but I guess here in Southern Africa, what really put these guys on the map was this incredible aerial display that they're capable of. This is not them leaping out the waters to show off or be social that we know of. This is typically their famed hunting strategy. It's called a Polaris breach. And this is them rushing with everything they've got at the surface in order to be able to take a Cape fur seal. And it's very much a behavior that we would see in South Africa, not so much elsewhere. Remember, white shark aggregation sites are in areas like Australia, New Zealand, California, Cape Cod on the eastern states, seaboard of the States. And this kind of breaching behavior is really quite unique to South Africa, likely because the Cape fur seals are so agile themselves. So the way that it all goes down here, these seal colonies are based very close to the shoreline. So what happens is the white sharks hunt around them in winter months typically, and that is when the young of the year pups are ready to go out and feed for the first time. Remember that the Cape fur seals give birth in November, so a female would have 1 pup and it would feed off its mother's milk fat, which is like 40% or so, 40% fat. And around about May time, they have a nice thick layer of blubber and they head out with the rest of the seals to go hunt. The only thing is they're really inexperienced at that point, and of course that's why the white sharks like to selectively time their visits for the inexperienced juveniles. Over the course of winter, what tends to happen is the Cape fur seals learn how to evade predation over time. So that's an outward bound group of seals. You can see how closely they all kind of stay to one another. And all of these photos I've just shown you now of the fur seals and the breaching white sharks are by Chris Fallows, who is a renowned conservationist and photographer. But you can see here, this is the classic Polaris breach that we will often see happen down along the Cape coasts in winter months. Quite spectacular and quite the draw card for many cinematographers and of course divers to come down and film and experience for themselves. Here in Hansby, what we tend to see in winter months is this really beautiful, clear, warm water. And this is a photograph of a white shark around Dyer Island. And of course, for the cage diving, this kind of water or these conditions are really quite optimal. And white sharks are really intelligent compared to other species of sharks. I know as a scientist, often it's dangerous to use the word intelligence. But if you spent enough time with these guys, and I've spent thousands and thousands and thousands of hours out observing them, tagging them, tracking them, stalking them, you name it, there's something very different about great whites that isn't quite the same as other shark species. Remember, there's over 530 different types of sharks. These guys are, of course, very driven by their olfactory sense. They've got some of the highest sort of sensitized olfactory neurons compared to any of the sharks, but they're very visual as well, and they work things out. They're inquisitive. So yeah, I mean, this kind of photo shows quite clearly that the shark's just as interested in me with the camera as I am in it.